Three men met on a nude beach. Two of the three men were happy, but the third was sad. The three men broke into a conversation. Eventually, they started talking about their jobs and why they were at the beach. "I'm a construction worker," said the first man. "All day long I toil in the hot, hot sun and do so wearing very heavy clothes. It's quite exhausting, but here I can relax and do so without any clothing at all." "I'm an accountant," said the second man. "I just like how everyone here is dressed exactly the same." The first two men turned to the third, sad man. "What about you?" they asked. "Why are you here?" "My doctor sent me here," said the third man. "I'm a pickpocket." 1. A man goes to the doctor and complains that his wife can't hear him. "How bad is it?" the doctor asks. "I have no idea," the husband says. "Well, please test her. Stand 20 feet away from her and say something. If she doesn't hear you, get closer and say the same thing. Keep moving closer and closer and repeating the comment until she does hear you. That way, we'll have an idea of her range of hearing loss." So the man goes home and sees his wife in the kitchen chopping up vegetables for dinner. From 20 feet away, "What are we having for dinner?" No answer. From 10 feet, same thing. From 5 feet, same thing. Finally, he's standing right behind her. "What's for dinner?" She turns around, looks at him and says, for the fourth time, "Beef stew." 2. Queensland farmers Jim and Bob are sitting at their favorite bar drinking beer. Jim turns to Bob and says, "You know, I'm tired of going through life without an education. Tomorrow, I think I'll go to the community college and sign up for some classes." Bob thinks it's a good idea, and the two leave. The next day, Jim goes down to the college and meets Dean of Admissions, who signs him up for the 4 basic classes: maths, English, history, and logic. "Logic?" Jim says. "What's that?" The dean says, "I'll give you an example. Do you own a whippersnipper?" "Yeah." "Then logically speaking, because you own a whippersnipper, I think that you would have a yard." "That's true. I do have a yard." "I'm not done," the dean says. "Because you have a yard, I think logically that you would have a house." "Yes, I do have a house." "And because you have a house, I think that you might logically have a family." "Yes, I have a family." "I'm not done yet. Because you have a family, then logically you must have a wife. And because you have a wife, then logic tells me you must be a heteros. UL. I am a heteros UL. That's amazing. You were able to find out all of that because I have a whippersnipper. Excited to take the class now, Jim shakes the dean's hand and leaves to go meet Bob at the bar. He tells Bob about his classes, how he is signed up for maths, English, history, and logic. "Logic?" Bob says. "What's that?" Jim says, "I'll give you an example. Do you have a whippersnipper?" "No." "Then you're a poofter." 3. A wife arrived home after a long shopping trip and was horrified to find her husband in bed with a young, lovely thing. Just as she was about to storm out of the house, her husband stopped her with these words, "Before you leave, I want you to hear how this all came about. Driving home, I saw this young girl looking poor and tired. I offered her a ride. She was hungry, so I brought her home and fed her some of the roast you had forgotten about in the refrigerator. Her shoes were worn out, so I gave her a pair of your shoes you didn't wear because they were out of style. She was cold, so I gave her that new birthday sweater you never wore even once because the color didn't suit you. Her slacks were worn out, so I gave her a pair of yours that you don't fit into anymore. Then, as she was about to leave the house, she paused and asked, "Is there anything else that your wife doesn't use anymore?" And so, here we are. 4. A couple goes for a meal at a Chinese restaurant and orders the chicken surprise. The waiter brings the meal served in a lidded cast iron pot. Just as the wife is about to serve herself, the lid of the pot rises slightly and she briefly sees two beady little eyes looking around before the lid slams back down. "Good grief! Did you see that?" she asks her husband. He hasn't, so she asks him to look in the pot. He reaches for it, and again the lid rises, and he sees two little eyes looking around before it slams down. Sputtering in a fit of pique, he calls the waiter over, describes what is happening, and demands an explanation. "Please, sir," says the waiter, "what you order?" The husband replies, "Chicken surprise." "Ah, so sorry," says the waiter. "I bring you Peking duck." 5. A child from a poor family wanted a bike for Christmas, so he asked his mother. His mother replied, "Well, we can't afford one, so you'll just have to go ask the baby Jesus." The boy went to his room, got a stack of refill and a pen, and began writing, "Dear baby Jesus, I've been good all year. Can you please give me a bike for Christmas?" Then he looked at it and thought maybe that wasn't entirely true, so he tried again. "Dear baby Jesus, I've been good for the past week. Can you please give me a bike for Christmas?" Then he looked at it again and still wasn't sure if that was true, so he tried yet again. "Dear baby Jesus, if you give me a bike, I'll be good all year." But even then, that seemed too hard, so he took a walk outside to think about it. As he was walking, he saw his neighbor's statue of Mother Mary. The boy hopped over the fence, tucked it under his shoulder, and ran home to hide it. Then wrote his letter again. "Dear baby Jesus, if you ever want to see your mother again, give me a bike." 6. 3 men die and go to heaven. At the pearly gates, they're greeted by St. Peter. Peter says to them, "I will let you into heaven if you can show me a spirit of Christmas." The first man pulls out a leaf from his pocket and says, "This represents the Christmas tree. He is allowed into heaven." The second man pulls out his keys and jingles them. "These represent bells." He is allowed into heaven. The third man pulls out a pair of women's underwear and shows them to St. Peter, who is taken aback. "Good Lord, what do those represent?" The third man says, "Oh well, these are carols." 7. They approached one of the gas pumps, and the younger alien addressed it, saying, "Greetings, Earthling. We come in peace. Take us to your leader." The gas pump, of course, didn't respond. The younger alien became angry at the lack of response. The older alien said, "I'd calm down if I were you." The younger alien ignored the warning and repeated his greeting. Again, there was no response. Pissed at the pump's haughty attitude, he drew his ray gun and said gruffly, "Greetings, Earthling. We come in peace. Take us to your leader, or I will fire." The older alien again warned his comrade, saying, "You probably don't want to do that. I really think that will make him mad." "Rubbish!" replied the cocky young alien. He aimed his weapon and opened fire. There was a huge explosion. A massive fireball roared towards him and blew the younger alien off his feet and threw him in a burnt, smoking mess about 200 yards away in a cactus patch. Half an hour passed. When he finally regained consciousness, he refocused his three eyes, straightened his bent antenna, and looked dazedly at the older, wiser alien who was standing over him, shaking his big green head. "What a ferocious creature!" exclaimed the young fried alien. "He damn near killed me. How did you know he was so dangerous?" The older alien leaned over, placed a friendly feeler on his crispy friend, and replied, "If there's one thing I've learned during my intergalactic travels, you never mess with a guy who can loop his penis over his shoulder twice and then stick it in his ear." 8. Recently, I was asked by a funeral director to play at a graveside service for a homeless man. He had no family or friends, so the service was to be at a pauper's cemetery in the back country. As I was not familiar with the backwoods, I got lost. I finally arrived an hour late and saw the funeral guy had evidently gone and the hearse was nowhere in sight. There were only the diggers and crew left, and they were eating lunch. I felt badly and apologized to the men for being late. I went to the side of the grave and looked down, and the vault lid was already in place. I didn't know what else to do, so I started to play. The workers put down their lunches and began to gather around. I played out my heart and soul for this man with no family and friends. I played like I've never played before for this homeless man. And as I played Amazing Grace, the workers began to weep. They wept, I wept, we all wept together. When I finished, I packed up my guitar and started for my car. Though my head hung low, my heart was full. As I opened the door to my car, I heard one of the workers say, "I never seen nothing like that before, and I've been putting in septic tanks for 20 years. Apparently, I'm still lost." 9. Once a group of 500 people was attending a seminar. Suddenly, the speaker stopped and decided to do a group activity. He started giving each person a balloon. Each person was then asked to write their name on it using a marker pen. Then all the balloons were collected and put in another room. The people were then led into that room and asked to find the balloon which had their name written on it within 5 minutes. Everyone was frantically searching for their name, colliding with each other, pushing around others, and there was utter chaos. At the end of 5 minutes, no one could find their own balloon. Then the speaker asked each person to randomly collect a balloon and give it to the person whose name was written on it. Within minutes, everyone had their own balloon. The speaker then began, "This is happening in our lives. Everyone is frantically looking for happiness all around, not knowing where it is. Our happiness lies in the happiness of other people. Give them their happiness. You will get your own happiness. And this is the purpose of human life, the pursuit of happiness." Closing thoughts. The story above is a great way to teach us all to share, and that there is nothing wrong with relying on others from time to time. If people could all stop and think about how they can help each other out from time to time, the world would be a much happier place. Debriefing of the story. You would have heard many people saying, If you help others, then all the people will take benefit of you and you will never earn more. This is a completely false statement. In short term, yes, you may not benefit, but in the long term, your benefit is more than you can ever imagine. Therefore, always think about how your product, service, job can be made more beneficial to others and not about how it can benefit you. Never forget the words of Zig Ziglar. You can have everything unless you want, if you will just help other people get what they want. 10. Once upon a time, there was a man who was peacefully driving down a windy road. Suddenly, a bunny skipped across the road and the man couldn't stop. He hit the bunny head on. The man quickly jumped out of his car to check the scene. There, lying lifeless in the middle of the road, was the Easter bunny. The man cried out, "Oh no, I have committed a terrible crime. I have run over the Easter bunny." The man started sobbing quite hard, and then he heard another car approaching. It was a woman in a red convertible. The woman stopped and asked what the problem was. The man explained, "I have done something horribly sad. I have run over the Easter bunny. Now there will be no one to deliver eggs on Easter, and it's all my fault." The woman ran back to her car. A moment later, she came back carrying a spray bottle. She ran over to the motionless bunny and sprayed it. The bunny immediately sprang up, ran into the woods, stopped, and waved back at the man and woman. Then it ran another 10 feet, stopped, and waved. It then ran another 10 feet, stopped, and waved again. It did this over and over and over again until the man and the woman could no longer see the bunny. Once out of sight, the man exclaimed, "What is that stuff in that bottle?" The woman replied, "It's hairspray. It revitalizes hair and adds permanent wave."